Those who wish to apply for TPS have the option of filing their application online using the MyUSCIS online service. This presentation will review the various ways that applicants can apply for TPS online and will provide a step-by-step tutorial on how to fill out and submit an online application. There are multiple ways that applicants can use MyUSCIS to submit TPS applications. Applicants can choose to do the procedure on their own, or they can use a preparer to help file the application. There are three types of preparers: non-legal preparers, preparers that provide limited legal representation, and preparers that provide full legal representation. Here we see a screenshot from the I-821 online form. This page provides details about the three types of preparers. The first option is for the non-legal preparer. We see it says, "I am not an attorney or accredited representative, but have prepared this application on behalf of the applicant and with the applicant's consent." Basically, this preparer is providing some type of technical assistance in filling out the form. For example, the applicant might not be able to use a computer, or might have trouble typing, or might not know how to spell. The non-legal preparer might be standing over the applicant's shoulder, providing technical advice, or might be sitting at the keyboard typing in the answers. Keep in mind, however, that an interpreter is not considered a preparer. These are two separate roles. Someone who is simply helping the applicant with language translation is identified as an interpreter rather than a preparer, and this person would fill out and sign the interpreter's certification rather than the preparer's certification. Later during the tutorial video, we will see how interpreters and preparers fill out and submit their signed certifications as part of the online application. Coming back to the preparers page, we can see that the second type of preparer is for limited legal representation. We see it says, "I am an attorney or accredited representative, and my representation of the applicant in this case does not extend beyond the preparation of this application." For example, attorneys who volunteer at immigration clinics frequently limit their legal assistance to that which is provided at the clinic itself, namely the preparation of the application form. But they do not serve as the applicant's representative moving forward. As such, they do not submit the Form G28, which is the form used by attorneys and accredited reps to identify as the applicant's legal representative in a particular matter. Later in the presentation, we will use the limited legal preparer as our model when we go through the step-by-step tutorial. Next, the third type of preparer is the full legal representative. Here it says, quote, "I am an attorney or accredited representative, and my representation of the applicant in this case extends beyond the preparation of this application." For example, this option is used by attorneys who use MyUSCIS to submit their clients' applications. It should be noted that the screenshot here says that those who choose option 3, quote, "may be obliged to submit a G28 with the application." But in reality, the way the system is set up, you are in fact obliged to submit a G28 if you choose this third option. You will not be able to submit the application under option number 3 unless a G28 is included. There are two types of MyUSCIS accounts: applicant accounts and representative accounts. It should be noted that if you are preparing the application with a representative's account rather than the applicant's account, then the system essentially forces you to be a full representative. First, any application prepared using a representative's account must include a G28. Also, if using a representative's account, then the filing fee must be paid from the representative's account, and the application must be submitted from the representative's account. It is not possible for a representative to prepare an application using their own MyUSCIS account and then have the applicant pay for the filing fee using their own account, or submit the final draft of the application using their own applicant's account. That's not possible. These such steps can only be taken from the representative's account if the application was prepared using the representative's account. If an attorney or accredited representative is providing representation of the applicant that does not extend beyond the preparation of the application, for example, as one might do at a clinic, then the representative MyUSCIS account cannot be used due to the systematic restrictions reviewed on the previous page. Instead, limited legal representatives use the applicant's MyUSCIS account to prepare the application. This way, the volunteer attorneys do not have to pay the filing fees from their own accounts, and the form can be submitted from the applicant's MyUSCIS account. And perhaps most importantly, the attorney or the accredited representative will not be identified as the applicant's legal representative for the case following submission of the application. In order to set up MyUSCIS for use in a limited representative situation, such as a virtual TPS clinic, first the applicant must create a MyUSCIS account, and then they have to log into their account. And they have to log into their account before that they share their screen with their attorney or accredited representative. It should be noted that the applicant must have their own email address and their own cell phone number, which is used to log into their account. Next, we'll be joining a mock virtual TPS clinic that is using the second type of preparer option reviewed above, namely the limited representative. The applicant's name is Jimmy, George is the attorney, and Sunny is the interpreter. They've just joined their breakout room and have finished their introductions. And at this point, Jimmy has already set up his MyUSCIS account. He's logged into his account and he has shared his screen with the room. Now, George, the attorney, is doing the screen recording here, and he's about to ask Jimmy for remote control of the shared screen. Now, here we see the request for remote control is being sent to Jimmy, and once Jimmy accepts the request, Attorney George can start helping Jimmy fill out the form. To get started, choose File a Form Online, and then in the drop-down menu, choose Form I-821, Application for Temporary Protected Status. At this point, you should already have provided the applicant an overview of the TPS procedure and how you're using MyUSCIS to fill out the form. Now, as you navigate through this online application, you should explain the meaning of each page to the applicant. It's not necessary for the interpreter to go through it word by word, but you should provide a general understanding of what each page says. So this is an application for initial TPS status by an Afghan OAR parolee, and in this example we're also applying for an employment authorization document, the EAD. The webpage explains that the system will be redirecting us to the I-765 form once we're done with the I-821, and then we come to the preparer and interpreters page. We choose yes for both, and then we fill out the preparers and interpreters information. As you're using the remote control to fill out the form on the applicant's computer, you might notice a bit of a lag, kind of like the delay you get when making international phone calls. So this takes a little getting used to. Here, the interpreter does not have access to the remote control. So either George, the attorney, or just Jimmy, the applicant, can be the one typing in the information. At certain points in the form, and depending on the applicant's capacity, it can be easier for the applicant to do the typing. Now, keep in mind the information entered here ends up populated into the certification forms that are printed and signed by the preparer and interpreter, and then scanned and uploaded as part of the application. We will see how this is done later. Now, if you're volunteering at a virtual TPS clinic, it's possible that you will be signing and scanning your preparers and interpreters forms prior to the event to make things easier. On this next page, we're filling out the applicant's name, starting with the current legal name. For Afghan parolees, frequently this will be the name shown on the applicant's current EAD, their C11 parolee EAD. But it's always best to double check the EAD with the applicant, as well as any other government-issued IDs such as passports or birth certificates, which are called tazkeras. It is not uncommon for a name to be spelled in different ways, for example, due to Romanization into English, and sometimes parts of names are dropped. For example, SIV applicants who previously worked for the US military might have ID badges, which only uses one of their names. Just Jimmy, the applicant here, he has such a badge from his days with the KPF, so we're including Just Jimmy as one of his names here. The next page covers the applicant's contact information, including phone, email, and address. Note here that the applicant's email address is pre-populated into the form. This is the email associated with the MyUSCIS account. Now, as is normal in USCIS forms, the applicant has the option of providing a mailing address, which is different from the address where he physically lives, and then the system will immediately verify whether the address matches with the US postal system. Next on the form, we see date of birth, place of birth, and then moving on to gender, ethnicity, race, height and weight, color of eyes, and color of hair. On the next page, the form asks, what countries did you live in before coming to the US? If we turn to the paper version of the I-821, we see that this question is slightly different. On the paper version, question number 15A on page 2 of the form asks you to list countries of residence and countries you entered while traveling to the US, all in the same question. Whereas on the I-821E, the online edition, where E stands for electric, this question is split into two. Here you should list the countries where the applicant lived before coming to the US, and later in the online form we list any countries that the applicant traveled through on their way to the US. The next page asks for country of citizenship or nationality, and then moves on to date of entry into the US and place of entry. Here we see Just Jimmy arrived at Dulles Airport, so Attorney George types in Washington, D.C., which is okay, but you could also put Dulles, Virginia as the location of entry. We then move on to immigration status at entry, so we put OAR parole and then enter the I-94 number. We then continue through I-94 expiration date, passport number or travel document number, expiration date of the passport or travel document, and you can also list additional passports or travel document numbers here as well. This next page asks for current immigration status, so once again we put OAR parole, and then asks whether the applicant has ever been in immigration proceedings, and Just Jimmy has not. Then we turn to the A number, as well as the applicant's social security number. And then after that, it asks for the applicant's USCIS online account number. If this is the applicant's first time using MyUSCIS, it can be hard to locate that number, so you can leave it blank. Next, we turn to marital status and date of marriage. And then the next couple of pages we get to skip because you only need to enter your spouse's information and your children's information if you are filing a late initial application for TPS. Here, Just Jimmy is filing during the registration period, so it's not considered a late initial application. Now, at this point in the application, we begin to see the yes or no eligibility questions. You should go through each of these questions with the applicant, making sure they understand exactly what is being asked. For any yes answer, you must provide a full explanation of the circumstances relating to the event. Next, the online form pauses the yes or no questions and verifies the applicant's eligibility for TPS by asking again for the applicant's country of nationality and date of entry. Then the form turns back to travel history, and this is where we enter information about countries traveled through on the way to the US. Here we see that Just Jimmy was at the US lily pad in Denmark before coming to the US, so we enter the dates that he was there, as well as his immigration status while in Denmark. Just Jimmy is not sure what status he had in Denmark, so Attorney George goes with OAR at US military base, and this is a friendly reminder to the adjudicating officer that Jimmy wasn't really living in Denmark. Now, it turns out that during his visit to Denmark, Just Jimmy had the opportunity for a day cruise to Norway. He only went to Norway for a day, but there's a bug in the system here for the date range. It doesn't let you enter same-day trips. So Attorney George, he has a good idea, and he enters a 2-day date range here, and then he will make a note on the addendum of the form, which we will see in a bit. So after this page, we then turn back to the yes or no eligibility questions. It's always a good idea to provide some type of warning to the applicant regarding the yes or no questions beforehand. Maybe in your introductions, when you first meet in the breakout room, something along the lines of, some of the questions in this form covers sensitive issues, such as drug use, Nazi persecution, genocide, forced sexual contact, human trafficking, to name a few. By giving them a heads up, they won't be suddenly surprised when you get to one of the awkward questions in the form. The next question asks whether the applicant has ever served in a military unit, police unit, vigilante unit, and such. And as noted earlier, Just Jimmy served with the Coast Protection Force, the KPF, so he answers yes to this question. We know what type of information USCIS is looking for here, based on recent requests for evidence issued to OAR parolees applying for TPS. So we list the following: type of group, name of squad, time period, rank or position, name of commanding officer, duties, training, combat experience, interrogation experience, and whether participation was voluntary. Now, if your question is more than 500 characters, then you can continue the answer on the addendum later in the form. This next question asks whether the applicant has ever served in a prison or other type of situation involving detaining persons. Just Jimmy answers yes to this question because the U.S. military had detention facilities at Camp Chapman, theoretically. So we've seen in the recent RFEs from USCIS that the list of information for this question is slightly different from above. And we list the following: the type of facility, name of facility, the location, the time period, the rank or position, duties, training, the type of prisoners detained at the facility, and whether Jimmy's participation in the KPF was voluntary. Now, the next question asks whether the applicant has ever been a member of a group which used weapons against others. Just Jimmy answers yes to this question, even though he himself did not use weapons as a barber. Other members of the KPF did use weapons. We've seen in the recent RFEs from USCIS that they want the following information: the name of the squad, type of weapons, time period, training, and whether participation was voluntary. So Attorney George continues to go through the questions with Just Jimmy, and eventually they hit another yes question found in the section about crimes and misdemeanors. It should be noted that when Just Jimmy signed up for the Abbey Road Immigration Clinic, the crew pre-screened him for potential red flags, including criminal history. It turns out Just Jimmy only had a single traffic incident, but even with traffic incidents, it is important to review all of the details. On New Year's Eve in New York, Just Jimmy was arrested for hit and run and driving 90 miles per hour. Fortunately, the incredibly fast speeding charge was reduced to a minor infraction, and he received a probation and a fine. Now, all of this information should be entered on the form, and seeing that there was an arrest involved, it is necessary to provide a certified copy of the arrest report, court disposition, sentencing documents, and evidence to show that the applicant completed any probationary period. Generally, for traffic fines and incidents, you do not need to submit documentation unless the traffic fines or incidents were alcohol or drug related, or if the applicant was arrested for the traffic incident. On this next page, the form asks whether the applicant has ever been arrested, whether in the US or any other country, for violating any law or ordinance excluding minor traffic violations. Here, Attorney George decides it's best to answer yes to this question, seeing how there was an arrest and it therefore was not a minor violation. And then the next question asks whether, rather than being arrested, the applicant had ever been cited, charged, or indicted for such violations. So Attorney George enters the information here as well. The following question then asks whether the applicant has ever been convicted, fined, imprisoned, placed on probation, received a suspended sentence, or deferral of adjudication. So this is answered yes as well. So Attorney George continues to review the questions with Just Jimmy, including whether he has ever engaged or plans to engage in any other type of unlawful activity, such as overthrowing the U.S. government, trafficking controlled substances, engaging in prostitution, or other types of commercial vice. For polygamy, it specifically asks whether the applicant is engaged in polygamy now. So keep in mind some of these questions are tricky, so make sure the applicant understands the meaning of each. So that is it for the yes and no eligibility questions. Next, we move to the evidence section of the application. This is split into several pages, including proof of identity and nationality, proof of residence, proof of entry, and criminal history. The documents must be in one of the proper file formats as listed on the page here, and the maximum size of the file is 12 MB. When using a passport as proof of identity or nationality, USCIS requires that the entire passport, cover to cover, be included in the uploaded documents. Sometimes scanned passports take up a lot of size, and it might be necessary to split the passport into 2 or 3 separate files in order to meet the 12 MB limit. In the video that we're watching here, keep in mind that Attorney George is remote controlling Just Jimmy's computer. So documents that are uploaded to the application are files that are saved on Just Jimmy's computer. Now, whenever sharing screens, the best practice is to make sure that you don't have any confidential information on your computer screen, such as files or folders saved under clients' names or other sensitive material. For each document that you upload, the form has a drop-down menu to choose the specific type of document being used. For example, on the screen here, we're looking at the proof of entry documents for which they choose Jimmy's I-94 record. And here on the drop-down menu, you can see I-94 as one of the options. Next, we turn to criminal history documents. As we were reviewing in the form earlier, Just Jimmy did have some criminal incidents, so we will be uploading those documents here. Now keep in mind that you can either save all of these documents as a single PDF, like is being shown in the example on the screen, as long as it's under the maximum size of 12 MB. Or you can save these documents as separate file types and upload them separately. Now here we're turning to the additional information page. If you recall earlier in the application, Attorney George was trying to put in the single day trip to Norway and encountered a problem on the form there because it only let him enter more than one day for the time period range. So here on the additional information page, first you have to locate which question was it that was being asked. So George is scrolling down the list here and he finds it. when were you in this country? And then for the answer, Attorney George can explain why they put 2 days, even though Just Jimmy was only in Norway for 1 day. And this is because of the way that the form is set up online. So that's it for the Form I-821E. Now we turn to the review section of the application. First, we see a summary of the application fee, and as we scroll down, we see there's an alert for an error in the applicant's name. This takes us back to the name page, where we see that just putting a first name is not allowed in the form. However, it is okay to just put a last name. There are two ways to review the draft of the form. You can save it to your device and view it as a PDF, or you can scroll down on the web page and see the information listed below. For attorneys, it might be easier to review the form in the PDF format because that's what we're so used to. But sometimes for the applicants, it's easier just to review the information as you scroll down through the screen here. This way, the information might seem more organized to the applicant. Next, we see the preparer's statement page, which was reviewed earlier in the presentation. Here, Attorney George's representation of Just Jimmy is limited to the preparation of this application only, and he will not serve as the attorney following submission of the application, so the second option is chosen. At this point, the preparer's signature page can be downloaded, signed, scanned, and uploaded as part of the application. Okay, so it looks like Attorney George is about to make a mistake here, and this is a pitfall that must be avoided. Earlier, we reviewed how the Abbey Road Immigration Clinic signs and scans their preparer forms and interpreter forms prior to the day of the event to make things easier. As shown on the screen here, Attorney George is uploading the preparer's form that he just downloaded now, rather than the already signed form that was scanned yesterday. Here we see Attorney George uploading an unsigned form. This is a good reminder that whenever you upload a form or any document, you should open it and double check that it's the correct document. The next page is used for uploading the interpreter certification. Here we see Attorney George actually does it the proper way. Rather than uploading the unsigned form from today's session. Right here, we see him choosing yesterday's form, the one that has the signatures on it already for the. On this next page, it's the applicant's turn to certify that George Harrison is in fact the preparer and Guayarza is in fact the interpreter. And then we come to the applicant certification, which we should review closely with the applicant and have him agree to the terms above. And here is the electric signature of the applicant. So at this point, we have finished the I-821, and we can now move on to the I-765 application for EAD. Again, you should review these pages closely with the applicant so they understand what is being said. Here again, we see a summary of the fees, the types of documents that are going to be submitted for the application as well. And then we move into the Form I-765. For the EAD eligibility category, A12 is the only option available. Perhaps 2023 will see the return of C19. On the next page, we see the reason for applying. Now, this is the initial application for TPS, and even if the applicant has received a parole EAD, we still mark this as the initial application. Unfortunately, not much of the information previously filled out on the I-821E online form ends up populating into the next I-765 form. Here we see Attorney George with just Jimmy and interpreter Sunny filling out most of the same questions again on the form I-765. Next, we upload documents as we did with the I-821, this time including a 2x2 photo of the applicant, the I-94, a front and back scan of the applicant's current EAD, and again, we include the passport as proof of nationality. Here again, we see the review page with a summary of the fees. This time, Attorney George managed to make it through the form without triggering any automatic errors, but of course, the form still needs to be reviewed because many typos or other mistakes are not noticed by the automated USCIS review bot. At this point, we upload the preparers and interpreters certification forms like we did with the form I-821. Of course, making sure to choose the correct file. Again, it's best to open up the files before uploading to confirm it is, in fact, the proper document. Finally, we see the applicant's certification regarding the preparer and the interpreter. And once again, the applicant electronically signs the application form. Of course, if at all possible, it is best that the applicant be the one typing the name here in the signature box. So now we are done with the forms and we're ready to move on to the payment and submission of the application. At this point, you should follow the instructions provided by your clinic administrators on how to finalize the procedures with the applicant.